This whole season is about the broadcast and broadcasters that shaped us. The famous calls, the origin stories, the way we as fans have changed, as the way we experience baseball has changed. But so far, we haven't had a how to become a broadcaster show. Well, today we do, as I sit down with Ed Randall, who's done just about everything there is to do related to baseball and broadcasting, including producing a baseball talk show called Talking Baseball, with more than 500 episodes where Randall sat down and had deep conversations with the greatest ball players in history. Randall currently hosts a show on SiriusXM called Remember When, and also a Sunday morning show called Ed Randall's Talking Baseball on station WFAN. If you want to find out what it takes specifically and broadly to become a baseball broadcaster, and if you just want to hear some great stories, stay tuned for my talk with Ed Randall. From historic milestones
That did it! Holy cow! A strikeout gets his 300th career win, and I tell you, this is...
to euphoric moments shared by millions,
In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened.
to the simple banter that brought us together.
It's foul. Malachi with the call. I love that name.
It's a good name.
When you and I have a child together, we should name him Malachi.
Welcome to the Midnight Library of Baseball, Season 4, the broadcast that raised us, from radio to television and beyond. I'm Ben Orlando. Growing up in the 1950s and 60s in New York City, Ed Randall did not want to play hockey.
The only ice we ever saw was the ice in what were then called highballs that your parents had.
He didn't want to play football.
It was not appealing to me to knock other people down, or worse, me getting knocked down.
And although he didn't start that strong in baseball, Randall's tenacity sprouted early.
When I was 9, my parents enrolled me in the University Heights Little League. After that season was over, my parents did not receive a postcard, that was how they did it back then, to re-enroll. So I did not know that I was actually playing out my option that first year and that I was going to be a free agent. That next year, I took it upon myself and began to throw and taught myself how to pitch. And then I came back the next year and made the All-Star team. You are hearing from the University Heights Little League record holder for strikeouts in a 7-inning game, and that's not for hitting. That's for pitching. One Saturday morning, my Little League had a senior division, so it went 13 to 15. And one Saturday morning, in my last year at the University Heights Little League before I aged out, at 8:30 in the morning in Inwood Park, pitching for the Holy Family Club, I struck out 16 batters in a 7-inning game.
That's awesome.
I can't explain it. I don't know how it happened. Ben, I got Joe Violandi 3 times. I mean, it was just crazy. And I remember vividly when the game was over, I wanted to go back out there and pitch the 8th and 9th innings, but we didn't have an 8th and 9th inning. But the Holy Family Club beat the Holy Name Society that day, and they saw the best of Ed Randall. You know, it's great when you have one day. That was my one day.
Were you a baseball fan your whole life?
as I grew older, I always had a transistor radio with me, and I would listen to baseball on the radio, and it became addicting. And at night, when the atmospheric conditions would change, I would draw in stations from other cities. So I'd pick up the Baltimore Orioles with the great Chuck Thompson and Bill O'Donnell, and I'd hear Dan Daniel in Washington doing the Senators, and it was just a mesmerizing experience. In Catholic school for 12 years in the Bronx at All Hallows, 3 blocks from Yankee Stadium, and here they're trying to teach me algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and explain the difference between a scalene and an isosceles triangle. When am I going to use this? I'm in the back of the room figuring out, I'm busy. I'm sorry. I can't learn this. I'm trying to figure out Tom Seaver's earned run average. And the math that I learned was the math off the back of the baseball cards, and that I could figure out earned run averages.
Yeah.
And and I somewhere I think I still have a chart from a sporting goods store for batting averages, and you can look down and see if you were 10 for 36, well, you could figure that out because you could reduce it. But if you were 5 for 17, what that average was, that was phenomenal to have that chart. But after junior year, my final average in trigonometry was 64.3, and that meant I had to go to summer school.
For you with radio, what do you see? Because I'm part of this in research, in my reading, and like the difference between radio and television and what people get out of it, especially when radio transitioned to television, all of the people who were against the move because of what television represented and um
They
how
thought it
they
would cut the
experienced
gate.
baseball.
They
They
thought
thought it
it
would,
they thought it
but
would cut the gate, affect attendance.
yeah, but the experience of baseball through radio, how do you see that? Because you grew up with radio, and were you watching at the same time, or was it more radio for you as a kid?
It was both. I watched the games, which started, believe it or not, at 8:05 at night.
Hmm.
Um, Sundays were double headers that started at 2:05 in New York, and still by 8 o'clock you had seen 2 games. It was television, it was radio, but radio was portable, and you could go, you could have it while you were riding your bike, and that's what really set it apart. I just was baseball obsessed. And when I'd be going to a Hollows and waiting on the subway platform, I was doing play-by-play in my head. When I was playing shortstop or playing center field in Sandlot ball, my high school didn't have a team. I mean, can you believe it? It just,
Hmm.
but I was always listening to baseball, and it was just a terrific experience. But I was doing play by play in my head, waiting for the D train, playing shortstop, playing center field, and through amazing circumstances, I wound up having this baseball life.
Was that always your intention as you were, you had this obsession, this drive, and you're doing the play-by-play to move in that direction, or was it a matter of opportunity and luck?
Branch Rickey once said that luck is the residue of design. Broadcasting was an accident. When I was listening to Bob Murphy, Lindsey Nelson, Ralph Kiner on the Mets, and Red Barber, who I found incredibly boring, and Mel Allen doing the Yankees and Phil Rizzuto. Um, I, I just embraced them, and it was just a wonderful time. But I did not then project myself forward, thinking, "Well, I'm going to do that." Um, I didn't. It was just that there were classmates at Fordham who came to Fordham expressly to work on WFUV. But you say WFUV, and that is just people know that's where Vin Scully started, and that's where Alan Alda started, the great actor. That's where Charles Osgood started, and then people like me. I show up at Fordham for orientation day, and my orientation leader is a guy that I'm still friends with named Sean Driscoll. He was the news director of the radio station, WFUV. And after our orientation session was over, I walked up to him and I said, "How do you join the radio station?" He said pretty much what Woody Allen once said, 90% of life is just showing up.
So Randall showed up. The station was a few miles away, and normally he'd take the bus. But sometimes the bus didn't show up.
If not, I'd walk. And I would go in at night and do a station break. You're listening to the Jesuit voice of Fordham University, WFUV in New York. Stay tuned for the Lou Goodman Show. And I'd take off the headphones and go back out to Fordham Road and wait for the bus. And if it wasn't there, I'd walk home. That was how I got started at WFUV. But WFUV gave me the opportunity to be horrendous on the air, and shaken like a chihuahua. It was terrifying.
By having the freedom to be bad, Randall got better. He did the news. He did his own college talk show. And while many wanted to do a variety of sports, Randall's obsession led him in only one direction.
I was the guy who wanted to do baseball. Go figure. And so I would be standing behind home plate, directly behind the catcher at Jack Coffey Field, holding a microphone. And here's the 2-2 pitch to Ben Orlando. Slider is low and away, and it's out full now at 3 balls and 2 strikes. And the sun is out, and it's idyllic, and it's 35 degrees. And I'm freezing as I'm doing the play-by-play. There's no press box. I'm standing there. But it was what I was doing there. It was what I was doing waiting for the D train. And what I was doing playing shortstop at Harris Field, and what I was doing playing center field. I was doing the play-by-play. I didn't care. I don't know if there were any listeners. It didn't matter. I was on the air doing what I loved.
After getting a taste for broadcasting, Randall wanted to continue his journey at some radio station somewhere. So he reached out to 134 stations, and he struck out 134 times.
In my sophomore year, I wrote letters on a manual typewriter. I don't even know if your listeners know what the hell that is, but I wrote letters on a manual typewriter to 134 radio stations in 22 states, looking for something. I needed affirmation that I could do this, and I needed commercial experience. I got answers from that 100. It was 134, 142. I don't recall, but I got responses from about 34 radio stations, all no's, and I still have the rejection letters, because for me that was inspiration through the early years of my career.
Of all the stations he reached out to, there was one station Randall didn't think of contacting, and that was WRKL in Rockland County, north of New York City, because he didn't think he'd have a chance. But Randall had a friend, and this is one of the themes of this episode. I had a friend here. I had a friend there. Which, in me saying that sentence right now, seems fairly simple. I had a friend. But to have friend after friend who will help you, who will put in a good word, says a lot about Randall as a person. So, Randall had a friend.
And he calls me to tell me that he hears there's a job opening for a newscaster at WRKL. So I went up and interviewed, and somehow I got the job. And you spent your shift calling all the different police departments. You had a list of all the different police, anything new, well, there was an accident on Route 35. That was the first line on my resume. But it was the first line on my resume, which was great.
Finally, Randall's opportunities began to stack up.
I spent 5 summers in the mailroom at BBDO Advertising. I wound up at WPRJ Radio in Parsippany, New Jersey. Covered these incredibly boring town meetings. There was an internship at WNEW Radio in the newsroom in Manhattan. Guy at Fordham, Don McCallion, he got me in as an intern in the newsroom at WGCH.
Until the relentless one had to relent. But listening to his gut and knowing when to stop pushing was the best thing that could have happened to him. And we'll hear that crazy story after we return from a short break. Midnight Library of Baseball exists because there are baseball stories that don't fit into box scores or highlight reels. Stories that live in the quiet places, the forgotten names, the emotional weight we carry as fans. If you want to go deeper into that world, I've built an extended library at patreon.com. There are 16 additional episodes you won't find anywhere else, along with interviews and side stories that spin off from the episodes you're hearing now. Becoming a member helps keep this show independent, ad-light, and carefully made, and it gives you access to the parts of the library that don't always make it into the main feed. You can find it at patreon.com/Midnight Library of Baseball. Also, you can leave donations at midnightlibraryofbaseball.com, and you can write reviews and ratings on iTunes and other podcast platforms. Okay, thank you. And now, let's get back to the show.
So I had a job, a full-time broadcasting job before I got out of Fordham, a morning news anchor. So the day after graduation, I load up the Plymouth Duster and I drive to Westerly. And I'm there for about a week or so, or two, and I discover that I know why the job was open. The guy that runs the station is a madman. And I find an apartment, and I move into an apartment this day. And after I move into the apartment, I go to the supermarket. And I get a cart, and I'm loading the stuff up with the stuff in the cart. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm putting everything back exactly where it was. I go back to the apartment, I grab my stuff, and I drive back to New York. It's the only job, as I speak to you now, that I've ever quit. Couldn't do it. But this was going to be God's hand. The previous summer, our baseball coach was the great Gil McDougall, one of the great New York Yankees of the 1950s, who became the first player to make the All-Star team at 3 different positions: second base, shortstop, and third base. As you recall, I talked about standing behind home plate. There's no press box, and the Fordham dugout is on the third base side, and McDougall is there. And if I'm in the press box, he doesn't hear me, but I'm behind home plate and I'm doing play-by-play. So McDougall says to me, "Give me a tape of your work." The best of Ed. That doesn't exist. There is no best of Ed, but I'm going to find something.
That summer, between his junior and senior year, Randall buys a ticket to a Mets game in the cheap seats, and he brings his first tape recorder.
I'm right behind home plate, and I'm going to do play-by-play into my tape recorder with my man, Juan Marichal, future Hall of Famer, with the San Francisco Giants. He's pitching against the Mets. And I do the play-by-play. I give the tape to McDougall. I have no idea why he asked for the tape. He asked for the tape. Here's the tape. And it wasn't bad. McDougall, I later find out, gives the tape to Kevin McHale, the son of John McHale, who was the president of the Montreal Expos, and Kevin was running the farm system for Montreal. The tape goes from McDougal to McHale to something called the National Association, which is the governing body of minor league baseball. I come back from Westerly, and for some reason, on a Wednesday afternoon at about 5 o'clock, I take a shower. I don't know why I took a shower at 5 o'clock, but I did. As I come out of the shower, hello? Hi, Ed Randall? This is he. Hi, my name's Art Eisenberg. I'm the assistant general manager of the Elmira Red Sox of the New York Penn League. And your name has come to our attention. We need a play-by-play broadcaster. And what do I get paid? You're not going to get paid. What do you mean I'm not going to pay? We'll find you a job and a place to live. Ben, I'm going. I was doing play-by-play in the subway. This is professional baseball, Boston Red Sox. I'm going. I find out the Elmira Red Sox contacted the National Association looking for a broadcaster. A letter was sent to Elmira, and my name was at the top of the list. They were going to go down that list until they found somebody that was going to work for free. And I saved them that trouble. So the tape from McDougal to McHale to the National Association to the Elmira Pioneer Red Sox. I get in the car on Friday night and I drive up to Elmira. Here's the moral of the story. If I'm in that shower 5 more minutes longer, I never hear the phone. Phone answering machines were in their infancy then. We didn't have one. So if I don't pick up the phone, Art Eisenberg is going to go down the list until he finds somebody that's going to do those games. I mean, you talk about God's hand. Oh, my God. I mean, my entire life is different. No exaggeration. My entire life is different if I don't get that phone call completely.
Ed Randall goes to Elmira. He gets paid nothing for a while to do the night broadcast, so he has to get a day job.
If you walk into McDonald's with a Bachelor of Arts degree from a leading Jesuit institution like Fordham University, you got a really good shot at getting that job. So they gave me a paper hat that said trainee on the side, took me in the back, and taught me how to dress Big Macs, very generous with the lettuce, mind you. And all our games were at night. So I would work at McDonald's during the day and do the games at night. And I still have, fortunately, a pay stub from McDonald's.
Through a series of crazy circumstances, he ends up rooming with one of the new players for the Elmira Red Sox, a young guy named Eddie Ford, who happens to be the son of the great Yankee pitcher, Whitey Ford. And I think one of the lessons that unfolds for me in the story of Ed Randall is that if you persist, if you try, if you put yourself out there, and if you sincerely try to connect with people, good things will happen.
1,000 years later, I spent 22 years with ESPN on television and radio. And Old Timers Day would come around, and that's the day when Ed would turn 12 years old. Roll back the clock. Oh my God, look at these guys. And in Old Yankee Stadium, I show up with my camera crew from ESPN. And I walk into the room where all the old timers are getting dressed. And Whitey Ford spots me. And he comes over to me and he puts his arm around me, and now he's going to take me around the room. Mickey, I'd like you to meet Eddie Randall. Roger Maris, I'd like you to meet Eddie Randall. Yogi, I'd like you to meet Eddie Randall. Hank Bauer, I'd like you to meet Eddie Randall. So now it's so many years later, and Whitey's taking me around the room and going, and this is Eddie Randall. You know, he lived with Eddie in Elmira when they got started, and he made $3 a game, and now look at him. He's up working for ESPN. What a moment in a life of what a moments. and I'll never forget that. And so I developed a wonderful friendship with the Ford family. Whitey never forgot where I began, and I never forgot where I began.
Over the next few years, Ed Randall would continue to be Ed Randall. Through hard work and passion, he set himself up for opportunities, from arranging a job interview in a 3-minute elevator ride with the president of the Texas Rangers AAA affiliate, to cold calling a millionaire team owner in California, which led to a job broadcasting for the Oakland A's affiliate in Vancouver. And this perseverance, this trying, this passion, led to one of the longest running baseball talk shows on television.
The history of this was that I started Ed Randall's Talking Baseball in public access television.
Okay.
It so happened that the cameraman that I used for ESPN lived in Scarsdale in Westchester County, and you needed to be a Westchester resident to use the studio. Well, Peter let me use his address that I lived in Scarsdale, and I lied my way into UA Columbia Studios in White Plains, where I did Ed Randall's Talking Baseball. My set was a rubber plant, and the only thing I have of memorabilia were hats of defunct teams. So I had a St. Louis Browns hat and a Kansas City A's hat and a Seattle Pilots hat. And somehow, some way, I got Tony Gwynn on the show. I got Steve Sachs on the show. I got Bobby Valentine on the show. This was a marked departure for public access television. And I was on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock at the height of the Cosby mania, the Cosby show. I'm on Thursday nights at 8 o'clock. You could probably count on one hand the number of people that watched Ed Randall's Talking Baseball. So I would go to the hotel, pick up Tony Gwynn, drive him to White Plains, which was about an hour, sit him down, do the interview, and then take him back, depending on the time, either back to the hotel or out to Shea Stadium where the Padres were playing the Mets. And then I would open up my trunk and say, Tony, here's a variety of Italian wines. Please pick a bottle. These are the lovely parting gifts. And that was what I did.
A little bit later, Randall has lunch with Mike Lardner, who's running Sports Channel in New York. And again, this is the refrain. I have this friend. Because Randall and Lardner were friends, they'd worked together for years. Lardner knew Randall. He knew of his hard work, his capabilities, and he respected and liked him. And that's partly what led to what happened next.
We go to lunch. I'm telling him about this television show in White Plains. He goes, I'll take it. I'll take it. Without looking at one frame of anything I've done. I'll take it. There was no audition tape. There was nothing. I'll take it. And not only will I take it for New York, Sports Channel Florida just went on the air. They'll take it. They need programming. Sports Channel New England needs programming. And Sports Vision in Chicago needs programming. So I started talking baseball with 4 stations, not one, 4 stations, 5 million households. The first guest was Paul Molitor, who I had never met, but I had written letters. The twins were coming in on a day in which we were taping, and Paul Molitor, may God bless him, came in and did my show, a half hour of talking to Paul Molitor. We wound up doing 530 half hours. I like to say to people that it was an intelligent conversation without an audience, so there was no throwing of chairs like Springer, with a host who listened, with a beginning and a middle and an end of the conversation. And very shortly, we hope to reintroduce Ed Randall's Talking Baseball to a new generation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as you're talking about this and talking about baseball and what makes baseball different, it's this being able to slow down, being able to reflect. And, as you're describing your show, you're able to just take that space, it sounds like, which again, it just brings up this is baseball. It lends itself to reflection, to going deeper in these different areas.
People say, well, what are you proudest of? I said, Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray had not talked on air in 10 years.
Hmm.
Long story about how I got him, but I got Eddie Murray to come on the show, and he enjoyed it so much at the end of the interview. He goes, and I'm happy to come back. And I'm very proud of that. I've always had an insatiable curiosity. I think that of all the things I've done, play by play, anchor on television, produce, behind the scenes, right? I think my interviewing is probably at the top of the list and continues so on Sirius XM radio on Saturday mornings, where I host a nostalgia baseball show. And
Remember
I'm
when?
remember when. Now, I like to say, call myself the intern. I'm like Robert De Niro because I have the phone with the phone numbers and the relationships which I have nurtured for many, many years. And I'm very proud of that.
The more I talk to people about baseball and how it resonates with them and with me, the more I start to see patterns. And this is what happened with Ed Randall, talking about the power of a catch.
I'm in the midst of having 30 catches in 30 days. September is Prostate Cancer Awareness Month. This is the second year I've done this. Last year, they said go out and have 30 catches in 30 days. I actually had 43 catches in 30 days. I threw yesterday on the field at Citi Field with Ron Darling and John Gibbons, who's the Mets bench coach. Earlier this week, I threw with Bob Costas and Boomer Esiason, and I'm hopeful to exceed last year's record of 43 catches.
Now, I talked to several people, and somebody who's written a book on playing catch every day, and all these people who are doing this now across the country as a way to connect with people. And you're doing this to connect, but for this important cause as well. And it's something so simple, having a catch. The more people I talk to, it keeps coming up. This simple gesture, this activity that means so much, and it opens people up in ways that they couldn't imagine.
And it also evokes such precious memories from our childhood.
Yeah,
And it's what sets baseball apart. You don't hear about kids going, oh, well, my dad and I would throw the football around all the time. No. In basketball, that's impossible. You got to shoot.
yeah,
That's what makes baseball so unique. It's the only sport that gets handed down through the years and
yeah.
provides indelible memories in our hearts. I developed a friendship with a Hall of Fame broadcaster named Ernie Harwell, who has a statue in the outfield at Comerica Park in Detroit and is enshrined in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And having won the Frick Award for meritorious broadcasting. And he once said to me, lucky is the man to whom God gives a job that he loves. I'm that guy.
That's fantastic. I know there's much more here to talk about, but this whole nostalgia aspect too. This is what my podcast is about. It's about nostalgia. It's about unforeseen, overlooked stories. It's about emotion, and I thank you for bringing that into the conversation today.
Great to be with you, Ben. I thank you. I thank Rick White for bringing us together.
I do as well. Thank you, Ed, so much for talking
Thank
to me.
you, Ben.
We'll end tonight with a fitting listener baseball story from Ed Randall.
I'll never forget being in the movie theater to see Field of Dreams. And we get close to the end of the movie, and with his voice cracking, Kevin Costner says, "Dad, you want to have a catch?" That was when I started to sob in the theater. And the reason is I lost my father when I was 10 years old, and I'm an only child. And I can only recall having one or two catches with him. He was away all the time. He was in the Merchant Marine. He sailed around the world 7 times. He was a chief electrician on a ship. And so when he came home from Japan or Africa or South America, it was a celebration. And he was the one who introduced me to baseball and had me listen to Mel Allen on the radio at the time, the voice of the New York Yankees, and I adored Mel. What a privilege for me on my television show to sit down with Mel Allen on Ed Randall's Talking Baseball. But when he said to his dad, "Do you want to have a catch?" Oh my God. And even still now, even with the music is playing in the background and "Dad, do you want to have a catch?" I think back to that catch on Andrews Avenue and 183rd Street in the Bronx. And the connectivity in baseball and passing it down from fathers to sons is just incredible.
Thank you, Ed, for this talk and your contributions to baseball and humanity. Next time on Midnight Library of Baseball, how advertising and commercials changed baseball and the culture surrounding it.
You know, a lot of people think Billy and I argue all the time. Actually, we agree on just about everything, right, Bill?
Yeah, you betcha, George.
We even drink the same beer.
Light beer from Miller's. Light's got 1/3 less calories than the regular beer, and it's less filling.
And the best thing is it tastes so great.
No, George, the best thing is less filling.
No, Bill, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
Billy, it tastes great.
Less filling, George.
The show is produced and edited by me, Ben Orlando. Music by Sergi Papkin and Ashot Danielian, and other artists at Pixabay and Artlist.io. Good night.